People have resources. Nonprofits need those resources. There's a tax-advantaged way for that to happen. We help make that happen. That, in my mind, is holy rabbinic work. It's a fulfillment of the commandment of tzedakah, but more importantly, it is a fulfillment of Judaism's overall approach to society. That we have resources. It's okay to have boundaries, to go back to our original conversation. It's okay to have laws about who owns those resources and property lines and all of the things that you need for society to function. And don't pretend that those things are actually yours. Judaism actually disabuses us of the idea that we really own anything.
That was my friend and neighbor, Rabbi Aaron Lerner, discussing the song Magnets, Elevators, Ghosts, which I wrote, and which was inspired by Psalm 97. Aaron is president and CEO of the Jewish Community Foundation of Los Angeles, where he fosters community engagement and philanthropic efforts to support Jewish values and education. Under his leadership, the foundation has attracted record contributions of $435 million, distributed nearly $600 million in grants, and grown its assets to $1.5 billion. In recognition, he was named one of the Los Angeles Business Journal's 500 most influential Angelenos in 2025. You can learn more about their impactful work at jcfla.org. Before that, Aaron served as executive director of Hillel at UCLA, where he expanded engagement to nearly 2,000 students a year and helped launch Israel advocacy programs adopted on campuses nationwide. Ordained by Yeshivat Chovevei Torah and a graduate of USC's Marshall School of Business, he is also the author of Tzedakah, Our Sacred Obligation. Rabbi Lerner is a renowned spiritual leader and educator known for his deep insights into Jewish texts and his ability to connect ancient wisdom with contemporary life. In this episode, we explore the profound connections between art, spirituality, and personal growth, how music and creativity can serve as divine languages, offering insights that transcend traditional understanding, the role of openness and curiosity in spiritual practice, the importance of embracing vulnerability, how inviting possibility can transform your spiritual journey, boundaries. And we also talk about Yeshivat Chovevei Torah, what inspired Aaron there, and the upcoming dinner honoring Rabbi Dov Linzer and Dr. Michelle Friedman on May 5th, 2026. Reserve your tickets now at yctorah.org. Aaron and I talk about so much more. Let's start off by listening to this live performance of Magnets, Elevators, Ghosts. An actual studio release of the song will be forthcoming over the next few weeks.
Casual cafe fable. You knocked over the salt on your table, put down your poppy seed bagel and said, most folks call me Rachel. 2 years together and you asked for time. I am now a sackcloth porcupine, drowning myself in Blake and red wine. A gift, tears were bound in roses with twine. Magnets, elevators, ghosts, boomerangs, yin and yang. Return from being undecided. Some things return when they are invited. Last-ditch effort in the sunshine outside. On arthritic knee, I say, will you be my bride. Quills receding with hope wide-eyed, return to me like the ebb to the tide. Magnets, elevators, ghosts, boomerangs, yin and yang. Return from being undecided. Some things return when they are invited. The recipe of love is delicate, where the bittersweet swirl of sea salt chocolate. Magnets, elevators, ghosts, boomerangs, yin and yang. Return from being undecided. Some things return when they are invited. Some things return when they are invited.
In the same way that King David or the other psalmists were inspired to write the Perek of Tehillim, the chapter of Tehillim, the psalm, I was inspired to write a song inspired essentially by the Tehillim and anything else that came at me in that moment. And I offer the song to you in hopes that it inspires something in you. So what bubbled up for you?
I feel music. So I would say the combination of both the guitar, and the riffs and the music itself, in addition to the what the heck is he talking about? How did he come up with these lyrics? What do magnets, elevators, ghosts, boomerangs, yin and yang, sort of all have in common? I wasn't sure when I started listening to it if it was an original production, if you had actually written it or if you were reproducing, because the introduction left it a little bit. I was like, is this a song that I should know? Then I got in there a little bit and I was like, no, I'm pretty sure that it's not. For me, it's funny, I sent you a list of probably sappy 90s country, these songs that sort of resonate with a 12 to 14-year-old, the height of exploration of all kinds of things. And what's common about them is that they tell a story. What's sort of less interesting about them is that the lyrics are pretty straightforward. You get from one place to the next. And when I was listening to you, really, the artist's mind always surprises me. I love artists because they're different. Yeah. It's not necessarily linear. It's like, oh wow, how did that come out of Shep, this person who I know, out of the soul, out of the songwriter, out of the whatever. And that process is almost like a confirmation of the divine. For me a little bit.
Did you say confirmation of the divine?
Confirmation of the divine. So I can see that in a purple flower outside of your house. If you get the chance, you should see this flower. I mean, it's popping out of the ground, and you sort of look at this thing with the light hitting it in a particular direction, and the colors and the sort of unnecessary beauty of the thing. And that's like a confirmation of the divine. Mm-hmm. But for me, art can be that way also, where it's just sort of bigger than something that I can wrap my head around.
For sure. I already have a million reactions, so I'm just going to go in this particular place. Do you get that out of learning Torah?
Sometimes.
When?
Yeah, sometimes. When they say something that I never could have seen for myself. When it just is like, wow, same input, went in, but now what's coming out of the teacher's mouth is like, whew, I didn't see that. And sometimes, I feel like, oh, I should have seen that. It's like, okay, it's more like, AI, you give it all the input and then it comes out with something and you're like, okay, yeah. but sometimes, but more, the part that's more like special for me is when it's like, ooh, I really have to either it hits me in my mind or it hits me in my heart. But in one of those two ways where I'm like, wow, there's a wavelength there, or an energy there, or a message there that's sort of like new and different. That's where I get it.
Okay, first of all, do you remember your body sensations from one of those? And do you happen to remember the first one of those that propelled you to yeshiva, or something later that came up that's like, oh my God, I had this amazing learning from blank?
I'm going to go in a little bit different direction.
Please?
My journey to yeshiva started at Hillel. So when I got to Hillel in college, it was not at all clear where my Jewish journey would wind up. Religious experiences growing up. The first experience that I had with Hillel, they actually kicked me out. More or less.
Why?
Because I was scary to them. It was like, I wasn't easy to put into a box.
Why?
Because I had all these religious experiences, and I wasn't easily fitting into a box for people. And generally, I don't fit into boxes for people.
One of the things we love about you.
Yeah, but those people are also scary, and I get that, where it's like, wait, I don't know what you're going to do with all of this. You're coming in and you're telling me that you want to sort of explore your identity, but also like you're a charismatic, person who knows more Torah than, maybe the executive director at the time or whatever is. And if this goes in a way that I'm going to have a hard time controlling, actually scared of you, even as a student participant in my Hillel.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a feeling. That's actually what I'm reacting to that you said before, is like the feeling of being 18 and not knowing, who you are and where you fit, and not really even being responsible for who you are. Like, you're mostly just who your parents are, or the culture that you grew up with, or, I just heard this great quote on retreat. Somebody said, you think that you're thinking your own thoughts, but for the most part, you're just thinking the thoughts of the culture that surrounds you. Okay, so fine. So I grew up in a particular culture and I had particular thoughts. The job of a great Hillel rabbi or a great Hillel professional is to sort of like expand and deepen that. People who are closed to that need to shut that down because they need more control over the situation. Feeling that generates in somebody who's 18 with all of their otherwise really big feelings is like, it's almost like a gut punch.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I wanted to explore and I wanted to like be expansive and have somebody, teach me and challenge me in a way that I could like actually interface with and grow. And instead you're telling me that that's like cut off. That's cut off.
Did they actually tell you that?
Yeah. I mean, he basically told me like, so what happened is I came in and I was a very charismatic, kind of young. So they asked me to come on the board. Him saying like, okay, it sounds like you wouldn't be a good student board representative. He said, and I'm not sure you should really like be coming around. And then told, other staff members about my story that he didn't really have permission to tell about. I mean, the whole thing was sort of very bizarre. But in the same way that my kid now, so I have a kid who's graduating from high school, that kid wants to go into early childhood special education. Been more people who had understood them, maybe their pathway would have gone a little bit differently. And so actually that feeling of that gut punch was like, oh, I don't want people to get hit like this. What does it look like in my field? How could I make the non-gut punch, but rather the embrace and the hug, a possibility for people, who are this? And actually, and I sort of explained some of this to Ravavi as I was going through the process of applying to YCT. And it was just apparent that YCT was a place that was open in the truest sense. It was open to who I was, to who the person next to me was, to the stories of all of the and inputs and joys and sorrows of, sort of getting to the point where you could ever decide that you wanted to be a rabbi. And instead of closing off possibilities for people, it was like, yeah, come on, let's do this. And I told Ravavi at the time, I said, I'm not really particularly interested in denominational, going into an Orthodox pulpit. And he got it immediately. And he said, it's okay, you'll be a Rav La'am.
Explain.
A Rav La'am would mean like you'll be a rabbi for the people. Right. And I said, yeah, I want to be a Hillel rabbi. I want to be a Rav La'am. I don't want to be, somebody who's narrow and who's sort of limited. I want to be that open, that open version. And so I think, to whether or not it's caught on, the idea of open orthodoxy really captures YCT. It captures who they are in the world. It captures the kind of confidence that you need to be out in the world with. It's not easy to be open.
Right.
If you're open, potentially you don't have all the walls up so you can get attacked.
As we know, unfortunately, too well.
Yeah. But it's also the most beautiful and wonderful way to be.
It's choosing hope. It's choosing love. Let me ask you this. Again, I have a million things. You see me writing these little notes. Did your experience go to, because you knew in your interview phase that you wanted to be a Hillel rabbi, and was your reaction to your Hillel experience, are those two things connected?
For sure.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for me, it was like a tikkun of my Hillel experience.
Uh-huh. Were you conscious of that?
Yeah, I was conscious of that even in Hillel. And the executive director changed. The rabbi came in. Rabbi who had the confidence to be able to deal with people whose stories didn't align perfectly with what, maybe would be normal or normative at Hillel. That rabbi opened up the possibility for me to become who I was. The Jewish journey that was cut off by the first person was enabled by the second person at his own personal risk. So he, I was inspired by that, figure who really changed my life.
Wow, that's
forever.
Amazing. All right, so just going in random. Again, there's so many threads here to pull on, but so we talked about openness and orthodoxy. I want to name the fact that we are both connected to YCT. You're obviously a YCT grad. Full disclosure, Rav Avi is third cousin of mine. I recently spoke to him and shared a chart because I have a family call every Monday, and I said that I had a call scheduled with Rav Avi because here's my other disclosure. I'm on the YCT board right now. Thank you, Rabbi Yafa Epstein. So I reached out to Rav Avi because I've known him. I used to go to the Triple SJ marches and a variety of other things that he had scheduled. And I knew him well from his times coming out to B'nai David because of how close he was with, or is with, Rav Yosef. So my cousin said, "Oh, my brother, he's the family genealogist. He's our cousin, right?" I'm like, "I know." And my cousin Maishi, who comes to our weekly family calls, or Marty, said, "How are we related?" And so my brother walked us through it, and I prepared this chart, and I filled it out. And then when I was talking to Rav Avi, he said, "How are we related?" So I was able to send that to him.
I love it.
So, okay. So in that full disclosure, and to be clear, I too, I love the idea, though I no longer identify as Orthodox. I certainly grew up that way and affiliated with the modern Orthodox community largely, because I was already, even back then, though I didn't have a word for it, I was already friendly and participating in ritual spaces that were not Orthodox, Reform and conservative and et cetera, et cetera. And eventually I came to call that Limud Judaism. Where I'm going with all of this is, are there limits to orthodoxy? And here's why it comes up, because yesterday, Limud North America honored Rabbi Yafa Epstein, and there was a whole conversation around pluralism. And Rabbi Elka Abramson talked about some language that Rabbi Sharon Brous, I know that's a lot of names, was recently using about not saying that we want to be a big tent, but we want to be the middle tent. And Elka used other language that I thought was really interesting. She said, we want a tent that's big enough. Mm-hmm. Whether it's the middle tent or it's the tent that's big enough, either one suggests that there are boundaries. So this is really, I'm getting to the question. How do you have open orthodoxy in a world where the nature of orthodoxy requires boundaries?
First of all, I think the nature of anything requires boundaries. You can't have a totally unbounded, Hefkerwelt where everything goes all the time. We know how those social experiments end. We know how those, so that's number one. I'm not involved in defining the boundaries of, that particular question. I think is essential, but it's not my particular question. I'll tell you that at Hillel, and I think that, Orthodox communities could probably use this as well, everybody was welcome, right? The doors are open to everybody. You can come in with whatever your own story is, whatever your own beliefs are. You are a divine creature of, God. So come, let's break bread together, sit next to me. that's a different question than whether or not you can lead the community, whether or not you are understanding who the community is, or you're, on boards or other kinds of questions. So I think it's like, to go back to my Hillel example, Hillel was certainly within its rights to say, oh, great, it doesn't sound like you're the right leader for this.
But after one meeting, how did this person make that decision?
I was scary to them, but the right answer was, it doesn't sound like you're the right person to be on the board, but boy, would I like to get to know you better.
Yeah.
And that's a different kind of openness, where it's sort of like a curious, embracing openness without sacrificing who you are.
Right.
So you get to be who you are, and other people get to be who they are.
For someone who's been through a lot of mediations and leadership trainings and communication places, that's the empathy game that you play. When you find that people are fighting, you say, okay, let's take each other's positions. Because once you do that, if you're a truly kind of thinking and feeling person, you start breaking down your own arguments and find the commonality with the other person.
Yeah. And that's by the way why we put Hillel first. Right? Like, Hillel didn't teach Shammai's positions as a straw man. Like, I think they actually spent time to figure out, like, boy, where's that coming from?
Right.
How would you arrive at that conclusion? Maybe you still disagree, but at least you spent that time to, like, really understand it. And by the way, sometimes when you spend the time to really understand it, you might actually adopt some of what they, some of what they actually think, and that would be okay too.
I think I learned this from Rabbi Beryl Wein. It's not an accident that Shammai, who was known as a strict, disciplinary, boundaried personality, is the one who in Pirkei Avos says, I forget the verb, meet everyone, besever panim yafot, which means, with a beautiful countenance. Yeah. Like, have a good attitude. Yeah. Right? So there's no accident. At the end of his life, he came to this conclusion that he needed to be a little bit less gruff, or a lot less gruff. I mean, the Pirkei Avos is unclear on that. And for those who don't know Hebrew, Pirkei Avos is a book that in English translates to Ethics of Our Ancestors. So do you remember, whether it's Rav Linzer or Rav Avi or one of the other educators at YCT, and I'm not limiting it to rabbis, where you had one of those, oh, wow moments? And the answer can be no. But if you did, that would be super awesome.
We're thinking Shir with Rav Linzer, how expansive his mind must be to hold all. and the oh wow was like oh wow, Torah is big. Even on one of these subjects, you would get these source sheets. Rav Linzer's source sheets were like, oh wow, source sheets. They're like 17 pages on one particular piece of minutia of halacha, that it's true. The rabbis, I mean, when you see the commentators, they go all the way down and deep and through the ages, and they're talking to each other, and the magnificence of a Rosh Yeshiva who is able to synthesize that, to combine it with what's happening in the 21st century. Chazal didn't know about microwaves. Right. They had no idea. And in my business, they never could have imagined the kind of wealth that we have today.
Chazal
are the rabbis from 2,000 years ago. We still predicate pretty much all of Jewish practice on their writings, but it develops over time. And some people, it feels like, are still stuck in the 1600s. But Rav Linzer is like, he knows the full stream, and he's still able to come up with a 21st century Pesach, which is the Jewish decision about how we're actually going to function. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, like, even though 70, you have to still say, like, yes or no. Right. And he's able to, my oh wow was like, oh wow, you hold all of that together and you're actually able to make a decision here. Whew.
And it's no accident that so much of halacha comes from a shaila, a question that a rabbi answers, and that you get sometimes a multiplicity of answers to. And we live with, back to this pluralism conversation, this openness conversation, we live with conflicting answers sometimes. And the Talmud records conflicting answers, even if we say, we're going to hold like Hillel everywhere except here. So I think that these are important values. And I want to bring this back to the songwriting thing, because that's where you started. So one of the questions you asked is, what the heck is he talking about? So what did you think I was talking about?
Really got the sense from the song that we were talking about, Journeys, that we were talking about something, you have love in here, and you've got a sort of a story that's happening between people, and there's this sense of like return. Some things return when they are invited, which I thought, I'm recently coming off of an Or Halev meditation retreat, and that really struck me.
You need to explain what that is.
So Or Halev is a mindfulness organization. They do multi-day retreats, and it's a heart opener and a soul opener in just really profound ways. I actually went with my dad, which was beautiful.
Wow.
It was his 4th retreat. For me, it was my 5th. And this idea of being able to invite things is just so profound in like the cosmic realm. Right? Like, I don't know how all this stuff works. I don't know how prayer works. I don't know how energy works. I don't know, whatever. I do know that when you invite possibility, new things can happen.
Have you had experiences like that?
Yeah, for sure.
Are you comfortable sharing?
Yeah, I think most of my transitions have been actually about inviting some kind of possibility where, it's like you may be comfortable or uncomfortable where you are, and then something appears. So for me in my current role, I was on campus. I'd been there for a decade. I really love 18 to 25-year-old, especially working with them on their Jewish journeys and all the questions that came up for me. Was not looking to go anywhere. And then there's like there's a possibility of, doing this other thing. When you hit those kinds of crossroads, you can invite the possibility or you cannot invite the possibility. But what does it look like if you just take an invitation to look inside of yourself? Forget about cosmic openings and all kinds of other things. Most people, I think, actually, if they would spend 15 to 20 seconds, like just shut your eyes, find out what's going inside of your body, really look from the gut or the feet or wherever else you feel stuff besides just your head, and invite the possibility that there could be something there that's different than maybe what your intellectual answer is coming up with. And I think that's those invitations have been the most profound for me in my life.
Are you a regular yogi or meditator?
I try to be a regular meditator if I possibly can. Mostly breath, being anchored in, just anchored where you are. This actually becomes a practice throughout the day, if at all possible.
I think mindfulness is a core value of Judaism. This is what brachos are all about, blessings. Yeah. When you're ingesting the food, you're recognizing that it's not just food to consume.
Yeah.
There's a process behind it. Like if you really think about it, it's not just coming from God. God created the humans and God created the seeds, and the humans took the seeds and built the seeds and plowed the field, and so on. And eventually the Amazon truck gets it to you.
Right. And then we say, Hamotzi lachem min haaretz, right? We say, we thank God who brought forth bread from the earth.
Right.
But I've never seen a bread tree. So
exactly.
How's that work? No, actually, it's the divinity within each one of the 150 people who planted the seeds and ground the grain and delivered it, whatever else, that when we all came together, wow, bread. Ooh, yeah, that's cool. Right? But to thank God for that is actually, it has to be some acknowledgement of God within humans. Otherwise, it makes no sense.
Right. But the note I'm making right now is, oh my God, there's a song here. This is the one who ground the grain and burned the there's a song there.
Yeah.
It's like a kid's song, but it'll be good. Drove the truck and so on and so forth. Okay. So, all right. So you're a regular meditator. And do you is it more like I get up in the morning, like you have your Zman Kavua to meditate, or it's, oh my God, the Jewish community, because you now run the Jewish Community Foundation, can be overwhelming. I need a break. Or is it both?
Both. Yeah, there's a part of mindfulness that can be deeply sort of therapeutic and healing and helpful, and then there's a part of it which is actually there's actually a third thing happening. There's a part which is just training your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Rav Shapira, who lived Salghetto and perished in 1943, actually talks about just the ability to pay attention to things, and that we have sort of lost the power to do so. But in losing the power to do so, you've actually lost a connection with yourself and a connection with the divine. Because unless you can actually unless you can slow down a little bit just to see what's happening, even just in your body, but to take the time to see feelings and the ebb and flow, you talk about the ebb of the tide here. If you can actually see what's happening within your body or what's happening in your thought stream in a little bit more disconnected kind of way, it opens up the possibilities for perception of God, of beauty, of the way that food actually tastes. One of the things I actually realized on retreat, it's like food is amazing, right? It's unbelievably, sort of tasty and textured and all of those things. But how come I didn't know that? Because I'm always, reading the paper, or I'm on my phone, or I'm rushing, or I'm eating in the car, or whatever. Like, you can't, until you actually slow the thing down to the thing itself, you're not actually experiencing eating. And so, like, a lot of people have gone through 4 decades of their life and they've never actually tasted anything.
Right. Wow. That's so powerful. And again, I think that's why before a meal, you make a blessing, even if it's just going to be a Danish.
Yeah.
Right? Borei minei mizonot. You remind yourself of the divinity of, which is the blessing you make over cakes and the like. Although I've always had a fascinating debate about why we don't make it over beer, but that's a whole other conversation. It's the moment to just like, you, God, created all these types of sources of food, sustenances, mizonot. And that's the moment to say, okay, as I'm going to take a bite of this chocolate Danish from Delice or this awesome falafel from Dr. Sandwich or wherever, like, you think about it and you want to, like, if you actually think about what you're doing, your brain says, slow down, enjoy the taste. Right? Yeah. Now, you can check the box and not enjoy the taste, but this is the rabbinic, perhaps divine, like, again, we can talk about the source of brachot, but it's, at a minimum, it's the rabbinic invitation to fully live your experience in recognition of the divine and cosmic. And so in a way, it's a lot like songwriting, because songwriting works best. I can write a song about God, but if it's just about God, nobody's going to want to listen to it. Right now, if I'm quoting Psalms, Tehillim, my friend Gidon, whom I had the pleasure of playing with a year and a half ago at Camp Ramah for survivors of the Nova Festival, he just released a song about loving God. And it plays with the text of Ahava Rabbah, which I think made it into this source sheet.
Yeah.
A great love. God loves us. Or maybe it's the other way, V'ahavta et Hashem Elokecha, we love God, yea, God. You can write those, and when you're quoting the text in Jewish songwriting, people are like, oh, cool. If you just write, God, you're awesome, I love you, Jews are like, whoa, this is a little too Christian for me. But at the end of the day, we're all trying to wrestle with this thing, which is one of the reasons why, and I learned this from several of my song school teachers. The one I happen to remember telling me about it is Vance Gilbert. He said, you want to tell the personal story. And because the personal story tells the universal, because we are all telling the same stories. We all have anxieties. We all have fears. We all have pain. We all have joy. So tell your personal story in a way that someone else can connect to. Now, this story in this song, I mean, you articulated a story, it's about return and there's love in there. I'm not sure if you got the arc of the story. And to answer your question, which I don't always do, like sometimes I'm like, it's really about what the listener says. But I think I need to answer your other question. How did Shep get there?
Yeah.
On my phone, I keep a notes app and I have a folder called ideas. And every time I have an idea, I write the date and I write the ideas. And one of the things I wrote was magnets, elevators, ghosts. These are something like these are things that return when you invite them to. And I was like, what am I talking about? I had no idea what I was talking about, but it sat there as most of what I write in my voice memos and my notes. Like I just have a million ideas every time I come up with one. I type it or I sing it into the phone and it's there, and maybe I'll use it, maybe I won't. So one of the other things, so I do this thing called Hook a Day, which is run by one of my music songwriting rabbis and mentors. She's not a rabbi. She's not even Jewish. Shanna in a dress. The idea is invite the muse in, right? And you just, whether you're walking the dog and you're just singing 3 words or reciting 3 words, or you're composing a whole song with your guitar that you've worked out and sharing it with other people, you're inviting the muse in. The more you invite the muse in, the more the muse comes to visit. And I don't believe in a muse per se, but I do believe that when you're writing art, when you're writing songs, when you're writing a play, when you're composing choreography, when you are writing divrei Torah and doing more than simply just synthesizing, and maybe even if you're just synthesizing, right? Cover bands are good too. Like, they become yours when you cover them too, even if you're covering it note for note. There's something divine happening there. And so I like to invite the muse in a lot. I spent last week not so much doing that with the Hook a Day group because I was working on a song for Yafa. But Shanna also runs these kind of Facebook-led retreats where we study artists. So we studied a variety of songs by Joni Mitchell, and Shanna gave us prompts. Track what Joni did here, whether it's the kind of the meter or the rhyme scheme, or we did a lot of stuff where, for the guitar players among us, Joni Mitchell is a massive user of open tuning. So Shanna was encouraging us to use open tunings. And I love open tunings. So for me, it was like, okay, well, this is great. And I've written before in open D, open G. I've written in the Yvette Young tuning, which is a crazy tuning. Do you play guitar?
But not at that level. Yeah.
So it forces you into newness, right? In the same way, like you're inviting new experience. If you play everything in standard tuning and you do kind of the A minor, E, G, F, E, C, like all that stuff in the standard formations, if you then tune the guitar differently, even if you use the same chord formations, you're coming up with something new. So you're really inviting something new by doing that. And it's one of the reasons why there are times where I'll write on my computer. There are times where I'll write in a notebook. Just the different media force difference. There are times where I'll write on a fretless bass. I can't really play keyboards, but I'll write on the keyboard anyway. So for this particular song, write a song about love where the tone is equally split between heartbreak and gratitude. Use a line of dialogue in it. Use an everyday object, drink, food, spice, metaphor, refrain. Shanna gave us suggestions. Optional for guitar players, use only 3 strings for the whole song. So that's that guitar playing that you noted.
Yeah.
And because the prompt was a love song, I tried to, like, how do I connect to magnets and ghosts and elevators and love? And for this one, it was a lot of journal writing, free writing about these subjects to see what bubbled up. And because I'm mostly trying to write Tehillim songs now, I'm like, okay, well, how is this a Tehillim song? Right? I'm like, oh, there's a million Tehillim that talk about return.
Yeah.
And that's really the fulcrum. And so I then took a break, probably around version 4, and like read this particular Tehillim and did a deep dive of it, and actually kind of discovered that there were all of these things that came back. Like, and of course your wife's name is Rachel, but like, why did I choose Rachel? Most folks call me Rachel. Did I want it to rhyme with bagel? Oh, no, it's not a normative rhyme in a love song. It is the kind of quirky weird rhyme that I would do in a love song, because like as much as I love the poppier, the more accessible things, I love the quirky and indie, like just the stuff that's offbeat. You know, I'll write a song in 13/8 rather than 4/4.
Huh.
I'll do a song in 6/8 and make it feel like we're in 5/4. Like I love that weirdness.
I like the unusual.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes we get patterned for what we're used to, but it's much more. The world is much more interesting if you expand out of that a little bit.
Yeah, for
Either
sure.
Whether taste or music or anything else. But again, it requires like a certain amount of sort of curiosity and bravery, frankly, to like escape what you're accustomed to. I think that's like so my two best friends are both artists. And I think that like part of what I appreciate them about it is that like they're kind of out there. And the process that you're describing is also like that. It's like part of this happened here and I had to use different modalities and I had to like get out of my own, head and thinking, which is like the chatter in the skull that's just preventing other things. I got some inspiration on a walk with my dog. Of course you did.
Yeah.
Because that's you're out of that mode for a little while.
Yeah. But I want to connect that to, I'm moving away from songwriting, though if you want to talk about any more of that, we can. But I want to connect that piece of our conversation to what you do for your work now. And I want to frame it, if my memory serves me correctly, you have a business degree and a rabbinic degree. So which skill set comes up more often? Or which skill set comes up when in running the Jewish Community Foundation? And why don't you say a bit what that is, because our listeners are all over the world and they don't necessarily know what it is.
Sure. So I'll start with what it is. The Jewish Community Foundation helps people give away money. Essentially, like that's in a nutshell. Like people have resources, nonprofits need those resources. There's a tax-advantaged way for that to happen. We help make that happen. That, in my mind, is holy rabbinic work. It's a fulfillment of the commandment of tzedakah, but more importantly, it is a fulfillment of Judaism's overall approach to society. That we have resources. It's okay to have boundaries, to go back to our original conversation. It's okay to have laws about who owns those resources and property lines and all of the things that you need for society to function. And don't pretend that those things are actually yours. Judaism actually disabuses us of the idea that we really own anything. One, by acknowledging God as the provider of all things. I don't even want to say creator. We live in a world that we inherited, where the soil and the moisture and the air and the seeds and all of the things that have to work for us to be alive for a single second miraculously function, right? We also in the United States and in Israel live in societies where we're able to there are boundaries and there's laws, so we're able to function as professionals. We're able to make money. We're able to generate new ideas. We're able to do things without having them stolen from, the local czar or whoever else used to, sort of steal all of the resources. And those are like incredible gifts that have nothing to do with us.
Right.
So, and Buffett gets this, by the way. Buffett, I think he's quoted as saying, and this could be apocryphal, but 90% of what you make has nothing to do with you.
Mm-hmm.
It's just because you got lucky, you were born in 1954, and you entered the computer age, and there happened to be one at your high school, and you happen to have a couple of good buddies, and all the different pieces that align for you to become who you are,
right,
really don't have a lot to do with you.
Right.
And that's Judaism's other great, secret, is that like that humility is just super, super important. But one of the ways that becomes very difficult in Western capitalist societies is that we believe that these things belong to us, and we believe that we made them happen. Neither one of those is particularly true.
Right.
So the Jewish Community Foundation helps people fulfill their Jewish obligation and the Jewish way of being in the world of giving away resources. Those resources then, we gave away $210 million last year. We helped people give away. It's an absolutely astonishing amount of money. The vast majority in Los Angeles went to Jewish causes, to Israel, to security, but we also give to non-sectarian, causes. There's people who have what we call a donor-advised fund, a DAF, just so that it has Jewish on the check.
Mm-hmm.
So,
interesting.
when Shep Rosenman sends something to maybe somebody would put together that guy's a Jew.
Right.
But not necessarily. But when the Jewish Community Foundation sends something on your behalf to a non-Jewish communal organization, they're like, wow, the Jewish community cares about us? There's some holder of a donor-advised fund who is Jewish who really cares about, African-American mothers in South Central and their maternity, the high death rates of Black women in this country. Like, okay, great. That's also an incredible purpose. The hats that I get to wear at work, I get to wear the rabbi hat sometimes. I just wore the rabbi hat.
Yeah,
right?
What did that look like?
I can say really scandalous things like, maybe actually God owns these resources and you should really give away, a good chunk of them. I can say scandalous things like giving $1 million is not impressive if you're a billionaire. Right? Actually, Peah and Maaser and the way that we constructed just the agricultural
Do you want to explain what those are?
Yeah. I mean, the agricultural laws, like you would take a piece of your field every year and leave it unharvested for poor people to come and be able to harvest for themselves. Because, and that product does not belong to you.
Yeah.
So the idea that you could have either harvested it yourself or put it into your own bank account are totally foreign in Judaism.
Yeah.
And the great thing about that is that everybody knew whether or not you did it. Right? There was no question about whether or not he gives appropriately.
Right.
Well, there's the grain.
Right.
And the grain is available for the poor people to come and actually harvest for themselves, which is it's beautiful. Yeah. So, and if you put that together with all of the other agricultural pieces, it's more than 20% of your crop was going towards the maintenance of religious life and sustaining the poor. So for us to do otherwise on a percentage basis and to pretend like the giving levels that we afford, now I'm talking about very rich people, but it's not appropriate. The giving levels actually should be percentages. So if I could do one thing for tzedakah in the American Jewish community, I would change the donor boards we have all over the place that list people based on how much they gave. I would just list them based on how much of their net worth they gave. That the Shep Rosenman and the Aaron Lerners can be, maybe towards the top of that board, even if we can't give the $1 million.
Yeah.
And then the person who really has a lot in this country, a lot in Los Angeles, a lot in New York, a lot, like the net worth that we've acquired over either a single generation, but really now this is multi-generational wealth in the Jewish community is enormous.
Yeah.
They might be number 63 on the list, or they might be number 600 on the list. Because for them, $1 million is like me pulling, $2.13 out of my pocket.
Yeah.
But I can say things like that from the rabbi standpoint.
Right.
And because we mostly have clients, like I don't have to go out and solicit anybody. We're more of a philanthropic wealth advisement shop. Like we get paid because we do good work.
Right.
I don't get paid because I asked somebody for money. I get paid because I really facilitated their philanthropy in a way that was great and tax advantage for them. I could get to say some of those scandalous things in a way that I never could have when I was a fundraiser in the community. 1. 2, I also get to put on the business hat from time to time and be like kind of a business consultant or read a spreadsheet or do, that piece of the job. I like taking those hats on and off, and because I'm a little like you, I'm a little ADHD. And it's fun to focus on different things as the day goes on. So I get to wear them all at different times.
That's awesome. Do you find yourself saying, I need to pull out the rabbi hat versus the business person hat in particular moments? Or is it you're going by instinct?
A lot of the rabbi work is actually done with people and their families. So, money's personal. People play all kinds of games with money. And sometimes with the families in particular, there can be a moment where I'm not saying I'm putting on my rabbi hat, but like I'm putting on my rabbi hat.
Yeah, sure. So you mentioned Israel a couple of times.
Yeah.
My memory of you is that you have deep connections to Israel. I don't remember why.
Yeah, we lived there for a few years.
Oh, that's
studied
right.
Studied in yeshiva there. It really birthright for me. Like I was on one of the first birthright trips, was transformational for my Jewish identity. So yes, the connection is very strong.
So is that a centerpiece of your tenure on the foundation? Like, has that changed?
I mean, it really precedes me. For the last 4 decades or so, Israel has been a particular focus.
How has that changed since October 7th? And I also just want to mention that we are speaking on the day of mourning and celebration in which Ron Gvili's body came home. So it's a very emotional and powerful day. Yeah. I'm curious how that's changed, how that event changes, if anything, in terms of your work.
Definitely a surge, and that includes philanthropy. So not only does it include where people are giving, people who may have been giving to, more non-sectarian causes may now be giving towards more Jewish causes, but also for us as the Jewish Community Foundation, people are coming because that's where they actually belong. And, you can pay Morgan Stanley to do the same thing that we do, but why? Like, you can do it at your local Jewish Community Foundation. Most cities have a local Jewish Community Foundation, and I think people are feeling in their kishkas, both with Israel and with anti-Semitism, a different kind of connection to their identity and to their responsibility to the Jewish people than they may have 3 years ago.
Sure. And do you see this shift sustaining now that the war is allegedly over?
I think for most Americans, actually, the realization that there is anti-Semitism that is alive and well in a place that we felt very comfortable for the last several decades is more actually, prevalent in the way that they are behaving and associating than what happened in Israel.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so that has not abated.
Yeah, no. On the contrary, it's gotten worse. And it's gotten worse on the extremes.
Yeah.
Well, so this ties me into another point that you raised, which was when a non-sectarian or non-Jewish institution or group gets a check from the Jewish Community Foundation, they're saying, wow, they care about me. Do you see concrete results that impact the diminution of anti-Semitism, or is it all anecdotal?
No, relationships are real, for sure. You win hearts and minds, and I hate even to say that. I don't even like that sort of phraseology.
But it's from Friday Night Lights.
Yes, which I love. And because I'm from Texas, watched multiple times, and because it's sappy and has good country music songs and everything else, I love that show.
I love that show.
Love that show.
Some of my favorite actors came from that show.
Yes. I would say relationships matter. And knowing that people care about you matters. May not prevent you from posting something, right? Or from, presenting yourself as allied with so-and-so in the community. Very hard to overcome when you've actually worked together on things. And I think that right now we're having a real moment of saying but we did work on these things together. And it can be really disheartening for people who are especially in progressive spaces to realize that maybe we weren't as allied as we thought we were, or as we had hoped we were. I think the jury's still out on that question.
How are you managing that? I know Rabbi Braz has talked about that a lot. How has it impacted you, and how are you managing it? To the extent you're comfortable sharing.
I'm sad for two reasons. I'm not just sad because in some ways our partners may have abandoned us or may have looked in a different direction, but I'm also sad for us. I'm sad that we sometimes tell ourselves a narrative that is not as true as we would, as it should be. I heard recently, my kid actually was just at a thing. I'm not going to say what the organization was, but they were on a thing on MLK Day. And the person got up and made MLK Day all about the Jews. Right? It was about Martin Luther King marching with Heschel. It was about, the work that we did on, behalf of those. And it just doesn't we get stuck too much in our own stories. And it's not healthy for us.
Is there anything else you want to go over? Because I could talk to you for hours. I love talking to you.
I think I want to appreciate, Shep, that the framing here is within a different modality, that the framing is music, that it's art. And I want to, if I could encourage the Jews of North America to try something else for a little bit, it might be to go just go real deep with music, or go really deep with spirituality and mindfulness, or try psychedelics with Shefa, or, get out there a little bit, because we've really become incredible intellectuals and learners of text And that's just one piece of all of this.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. And it brings me back to, remember I said I was debating how to frame this with you? That's exactly where I was going. Specifically this. Why am I combining these threads? You know, Torah, Avodah, and Gemilut Chasadim, right? The world is built on these three things. This podcast is built on three things: Torah, music, and conversation. And why did I start writing songs inspired by Tehillim? Well, in 2013 or 2014, I realized that I can write songs quickly, right? Through Fearless Songwriting, Timmy Reardon, another songwriting thing I do. The next one's coming up in February. And for a week, you write a song or whatever it is that you write in. The suggested guideline is 45 minutes or less. Some people spend 3 hours. Some people may spend more, but I really try to cleave to the 45 minutes to an hour rule. And you post whatever you do in that hour.
Beautiful.
And it connects back to what I'm doing here, because back in whatever it was, 2013, 2014, I read the Parsha regularly, and I came across what it says in Vayelech, Ve'ata kisvu lachem es hashira hazos. And now, write for yourselves this song. Now, the rabbi, first of all, the who is it? Sefer HaChinuch says that's the 613th commandment, that you should write your own Torah. And he meant to become a scribe like my grandfather, Rabbi Tzvi Hirsch Rosenfeld, who was a Sofer Stam. He was a scribe. He would write the Torahs, and he would write mezuzahs and write tefillin. I have the worst freaking handwriting in the world. That's never going to happen. But I can write my own Torah as a song, Shira, following that literally. That's the Karaite in me. Yeah. I can write essays on what I learn. I can journal about the Parsha. I can journal about Tanakh. I can create art that's connected to Torah, or dance, or photography, or, you know, haikus, greeting cards, whatever you want to own. That's the whole, like, this is my mother used to say, what's the message behind the message, or the question behind the question? And what the question behind this podcast is, how do you take ownership over your Jewish experience? And these songs, these conversations invite the listeners in to return and create their own relationship with the community and the divine.
Cool.
So my bracha to you is that your work, because I often end with a bracha here, if we may reverse roles here, your work continue to energize you in a way that it continues to energize the Jewish people, allowing newness to invite itself in, because we're making those choices. And in particular, I want to say that that newness should include encountering whether it's other Jews who are different than you, or people who are not Jews from whom you have something to learn and for whom you have something to teach. Because I truly believe that everyone has something to learn and everyone has something to teach. It was a long bracha, but I hope it's fulfilled.
Bless you that you should nourish others, that they should be able to experience nourishment in ways that are new and exciting and unexpected.
Another way of saying poseach es yadecha umasbiah lechol charetz.
Yes, you should open your hands and receive fulfillment.
Yeah. Amen. Yeah. Amen. Thank you, Aaron. This was really great.
For sure.
Thanks so much for listening. Special thanks to Aaron for joining me, to Shanna in Address for creating the space in which I learned so much about songwriting and that inspired this song, to Devin Schwartz for his help in producing this episode, to E. Rose for his help producing the song and this episode, to Jessica Chana Sweetler for her help on social media, to Liat Silvera for designing the podcast logo, and to my wife Shari for always inspiring love in me and our kids. You can find Magnets, Elevators, Ghosts, and all of the other songs in this song cycle on most platforms that stream or download music, including Spotify and Apple. Please support the podcast and these songs by sharing, liking, commenting, and subscribing on your favorite platforms as often as you can. In the next episode of The Rest is Commentary, I'll be talking with my friend and mentor, singer, songwriter, community builder, Timmy Reardon. We discuss the significance of the Fearless Songwriting Challenge that he runs. The next one is scheduled for early April. You can find it at The Fearless Songwriter on Facebook or DM me and I will send you a link. How the interplay between head and heart enriches creativity, some practical songwriting techniques, the concept of living with imperfection. How biblical psalms, divine mystery, and the unpronounceability of God's name can evoke wonder and awe. The importance of mentors, spaces, and rituals that foster inspiration and courage to share. The idea that every song and every act of creation leaves a ripple that impacts others and contributes to a collective artistic and spiritual heritage. And so much more. All inspired by Timmy's thoughts after listening to Little Bit of Gold, inspired by Psalm 80. Please join us.